Welcome back to Our Vision Farm. Today I'm going to take you with me as I make a batch of homemade soaps. I make sheep milk soaps out of our milk that we milk right here on our farm. But you can also substitute anything from the recipe I'll share with you guys. The recipe actually originated by being a coconut milk and coconut oil based soap, but I kind of played around with the ingredients and I actually use, instead of coconut oil, I use lard that we make right at home as well. And I use sheep's milk instead of the coconut milk. You can also use cow's milk and goat's milk, or you can follow the recipe as it originated with more of the vegan type ingredients. So you could just do the coconut milk and the coconut oil. But I wanted to show you the soap in all its stages. We're going to make a batch right now as well, but I'm going to show you how I cut it and then some cut bars that are curing right now. And this soap we just use for our household, but I also sell it as well in our Etsy shop and here locally in Florida. So this is the soap recipe that I'll be using. I'm going to go through all the equipment that you will need to safely make soap as well. So I hope you guys enjoy watching and learning. The first and most important step, which I still have to do before we get started, is get your kitchen cleaned up. Get all the dishes out of the sink, clean all the dirty dishes, because you don't want any of the soap mixture getting on the equipment that you use for your home and your food. So I'm going to do that in a minute, but to make the actual soap base, you're going to need some type of melting pot. I actually use this old pot right here, and I kind of use this as a double boiler. So I just buy these for candle making, so I had an extra one, and this is what I melt my oil and my lard in. You never want to put anything that has the lye into this because it'll react to the aluminum, but this is strictly for when I melt my oil and my lard. Or if you're doing it with coconut milk or coconut oil, you would melt your oil and your coconut oil in there, because as you know, coconut oil and lard is like a solid texture until you melt it up. So I basically use this as a double boiler. So I would put this on the stove and put my oils in here to heat up. So that is the number one thing you'll need, is some type of double boiler. The next thing, I've been making soaps all this week, so I just kind of leave the soap residue on there. But the next important thing is to use a bowl. This one I just happen to have in my kitchen already. I didn't specialty buy it, but it has to have that symbol on it. I am not quite sure what that symbol means, but I know that this bowl will not melt with the lye in it. So you want to make sure that it has that symbol at the bottom, or just do a quick Google search and see what types of bowls are recommended for making soaps, because it's very important that you don't get a container that is going to melt with the heat of the lye in it. So I just happened to have this, and when I first started making soaps, I researched it and looked at the bottom of this bowl and it had that code on it, so we're good to go on that. And this is very thick plastic, so it has not melted on me yet. And to go with your bowl that you're making the lye mixture in, you also want a spatula designated for soap making, and also that won't melt. So this is actually a kitchen rubber spatula, also has that little code on it, so it is heat safe. Now this stuff that I'm showing you is designated just for soap making. I don't make any food or anything else with this equipment. Another thing you will need, hold on, let me go get it. It is an Immersion Blender. So this is the actual motor part of it, and this is the attachment to it. So it's all a little greasy because I did just make soap last night, and I'm going to make soap right now, so there was no use in cleaning it. I recommend this one, Hamilton Beach. We bought it at Walmart. Amazon has some cheaper immersion blenders, but I have not had a good experience with it. It burned out on the second batch of soap that I made. You're gonna need the immersion blender for a good while, so sometimes they tend to overheat, but this one I've been making soaps and it has not burned out on me. So make sure you spend the money on a good immersion blender, and that is what's going to emulsify your soap base. For the actual soaps, you're going to need a soap mold. You can use one like this. You can find on Amazon or on Etsy, just online in general. It has the silicone lining to it, and it's a wooden box. You're going to need something to cut your soap with. I bought this little wavy soap cutter, but you can also use like a flat bench scraper if you are familiar with those in baking. Those work good. And then I use this bread slicer. I think I found this at Goodwill or some type of thrift store. This gives me nice and even cuts. I put it on the second, well, I put my soap bar here. I cut it on the second line, and that is the size that I like for my soaps. You can make it thinner. Another thing you will need as well is some type of mask so that you're not breathing in the chemicals while making soap. Gloves, and it is recommended that you wear long sleeve shirt, and if you have them, some goggles, or you could slip on some sunglasses or something to protect your eyes while you are using the immersion blender in the mixture. I'll show you guys all that later, but those are just some of the safety precautions that you should take to protect yourself. As for ingredients, you're going to need a solid fat, either lard or a coconut oil. That is what works best for this recipe. You're going to need lye. I ordered this on Amazon as well. Be careful with this. Store it somewhere where kids and pets cannot reach it at all. I just keep it with our cleaning equipment. It is very dangerous, very corrosive, and it will burn your skin. This ingredient right here is what makes soap making a bit dangerous, but don't be scared on your first try. As long as you have yourself protected with the gloves and long sleeves, you will be okay. And definitely don't want to breathe this in either. You're going to need some type of milk. So I have frozen sheep's milk. It works best in these ice cube trays for sure, because you're going to need a specific amount, and the smaller individual ice cubes make it easier to measure that. So you can use goat's milk, cow's milk, or coconut milk on this step, but I'm just using sheep's milk. For this recipe specifically, a sunflower and olive oil blend works really good. I've also used canola oil or straight olive oil. I've tried with just sunflower oil and it just does not work out. Sometimes it screws up the recipe and the soaps ends up blowing up in the cooling process. So what has worked best for me is sunflower and virgin or just olive oil mix, or just olive oil. You're going to need something to scent your soap with if you want to make a scented soap. I just have fragrance oil. You can use essential oils as well. And if you want to add some color to your soaps, I have these on handy. They're just shimmery mica powders. You don't have to add any colors to your soap, but some people do like to add colors. And that's just what I use for a little hint of color. Also, you're going to need a digital scale of some kind that measures in grams. For my recipe specifically, you want to do everything by weight so it can be exact. So let's get started with measuring out the ingredients. Alright, the first step is measuring out your oil. Whatever oil you're using, you want exactly 800 grams. And my recipe is going to fill up that rectangle mold that I showed you guys, but you can also use other type of molds. I have some silicone oval molds, or you can use some more decorative ones that actually shape your soap like a specific soap, like roses. They have lots of them online. I like the silicone because it does not stick. So I'm measuring out 800 grams of my sunflower and olive oil blend. You want to try to be as exact as possible. Alright, 800 grams. And then I'm going to reset the scale and we're going to add the lard. So it's exactly 200 grams of lard, or if you're using coconut oil, 200 grams of that as well. Some people like to use a combination of the hard oils. You can use mango butter, shea butter, or just make your own little concoction. Just experiment with it. I just have the lard on hand, so that is what I'm going to use. So let's try to get that to 200 grams. Oh, and sometimes that happens too. Alright, I'm going to put it a little bit under 200 grams since the scale turned off on me. Let's do like, try to get it to 180. Let's just leave it at that because I don't know how much I poured in there. But that is the lard. So now I have my lard and oil in there. That is what's going to sit in this little double boiler just to melt the lard. And so it gets to the same temperature as the oil, so they're both the same consistency and temperature. Some people measure it out, not measure it out, they take the temperature so that it's a specific temperature. I never really do that though. I just heat it up just enough to melt everything and so that it's a little bit warmed up, and it has worked for me. So to each their own. You can look up and Google the temperature and see the reasoning behind that. But so now I'm going to put this bowl on my scale. This is where I'm going to do the sheep's milk ice cubes and the lye mixture. So that is it for that. You definitely do not want to put any type of lye in this because it will bubble up and grow. Just take it for my word. You definitely don't want to have to clean up that mess. But I'm going to tar this, make sure it's in grams because my recipe is in grams. So what I'm going to do is put 200 grams of the sheep's milk ice cubes, just as exact as I can get it. You want it to be frozen because lye does heat things up and it has a tendency to burn the sheep's milk if you just use like cold defrosted sheep's milk. So you always want to make sure that it is frozen, because that will help with it not scorching. So let's try to get 200 grams of ice cubes in here. Alright, for me, 200 grams of the sheep's milk ice cubes. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Sometimes it ranges, but it was a perfect amount, so that is good. And then to this is where you want to start putting on all your protective gear, because you're going to be adding your lye. So I'm going to get my gloves on and my mask, because this is the stuff you do not want to breathe in. So let me do that, and then I will show you how much lye to pour in here. Alright, for this recipe it is exactly 138 ounces of lye. And this lye is in like little granular pieces. It kind of looks like salt, so it makes it very easy to pour. So I'm going to get 138 grams. Alright, we went over a little bit, but that is okay. So now what we have to do is just start stirring this, and the lye is going to heat up and it's going to melt all of the sheep's milk, and you will see that process. First it'll look kind of pasty, but then it'll start liquefying and melting. So lye gets to a very high temperature and is able to melt this. You can already kind of see it dissolving and thawing out. So you just keep mixing that while the oil is heating up. I'm going to go ahead and put away this lye and get it out of reach and continue mixing this, and I'll show you when it's done. In the meantime, as soon as this is up to temperature and the lard is all dissolved in there, I will turn it off. Alright, that is almost fully melted. There's just some bits and pieces of the frozen sheep's milk in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour my oil and melted lard in here. Be very careful. And you can just hand stir it in the beginning. But this is at the point where we're going to use the Immersion Blender, and this is the part where it's a good idea to wear long sleeves and some safety goggles so that it does not splash into your eyes. And as you get more used to making soap, you'll become a little bit less afraid of it, because I at first was very afraid of it as well. But it's really not as dangerous as it seems. You just don't want to get this lye on your skin because it can burn. Alright, so that is enough hand mixing. Actually, I gotta get a paper towel to set this on. I'm gonna need the spatula again, so I'm just gonna set it down on just some paper towel. So let me get my immersion blender set up. I'm going to make a peppermint soap, so I'm going to use some essential oil for the scent today, and I'm going to add a little bit of this green mica powder. Sometimes it's very hard to get the colors right, so never depend on what the color that you're adding into your soap, because 9 times out of 10 it's probably not going to come out as you pictured it. But I like to add a little bit of colors and just see how it comes out. Nothing too serious if it doesn't come out the color that I wanted it to, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to set up the immersion blender first, and I will show you the consistency that it should be at the end of blending. It does take a little bit of time, so I'll probably speed that part up, but let's get started on that. And the immersion blender is also really loud, so I'm just going to have to show you how it looks when it's blending. But so it's going to be like that, and just constantly rotate it, move it around, and just let it run until you get kind of like a custard like if you were making a box pudding, how it begins to look when it starts thickening. That's kind of the consistency that we're looking for. You don't want to over blend it. And about halfway through is when I add my fragrance oil or my essential oil. The color, you can add it now. I just add it right when I add the fragrance. The color doesn't matter, but sometimes the essential oils or the fragrance oil that you use tends to make this get thicker really fast. So you want to make sure you do the immersion blender for a good while before you go and add this, because that could screw it up too. So let's just do that for a little bit, and then we'll add the fragrance and the color. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of the color right now. I don't have any specific measurements for the coloring. I just sprinkle some in. Same with my fragrance oil and essential oils. There is measurements and you're supposed to follow them, but I guess I've just been making soaps for so long now that I just kind of add like a splash or two, and it has seemed to work out for me. I think you're not supposed to go over like half an ounce, I want to say. Maybe that's too much. I am not sure. I just add some for the soap to smell like it. You don't want to overdo it, because that alone will mess up your recipe. It can make it react badly to your soap mixture. It could make it rise in temperatures and just make it like soap has this thing where if it gets overheated while it's in the mold, it kind of explodes from the middle and out. I forgot what the name for it is, but that usually means something went wrong in your recipe, and we don't want that. So just be careful with your fragrance oil and your essential oils. Don't add too much. I like to add it to like a kind of smell it a little bit through my mask, so that you know it's going to smell like what it's supposed to smell like at the end when it is fully cured. But just don't go pouring a whole bottle in here, because that will ruin it. I just use a splash or two, depending how strong the essential oil is. This peppermint doesn't smell too strongly, but when I use the fragrance oils, which are more the artificial based ones, those tend to be a lot stronger in scent, so I don't have to add that much. But I'm going to keep on blending this until it's the right soft custard like consistency, and then we're going to pour it into our molds. Alright, this is how I kind of like it to be. It's kind of like a soft custard, like a pudding mix kind of, but not as thick as set pudding. Let's see if this will focus here. That's how I like to do it. You can keep going and make it a little bit thicker, but I've had issues with this recipe where it does overheat in the mold. But that's kind of how, I don't know if you can see in the light, it kind of has some texture to it. It's not super thin like it was before when it was just liquid, and it's not super thick either. But I'm just going to get this into the mold how it is right now. Alright, I'm going to carefully pour this in here. And like I said, this recipe fills one of these molds perfectly to the top. I'm going to use my rubber spatula to scrape all of that into here, and it should fill it to the top. Alright, that is all done. What I like to do with the my bowls and stuff, I like to just let the soap dry up in there, especially if I'm making more soap. I just leave it as is and I don't wash it immediately. You don't want to be putting your hands on this mixture anyway. So I'm going to take this over there to the dining room table and let this sit. I like to turn on the fan that we have here to help cool this down. So let's do that. So this is going to sit overnight. Like this one, for example, that I unmolded. I made this last night and it's ready to be cut today. It usually takes a good amount of hours for it to fully harden, enough for you to be able to cut it. And then these I have cut about 2 days ago. So these have to sit out and cure for at least the minimum of 4 weeks. The longer you go, the better. Usually 6 to 8 weeks is good, but the very minimum, it has to cure for at least 4 weeks, or else the soap itself can actually burn your skin, and you do not want that. You don't want to hurt your family or your customers by giving them soaps to use that were not ready, that were not safely cured. So I'm going to show you guys how I cut this one. This one will sit. Now this one, when I made it, I put in a little bit of pink mica color, and this is how it turned out, kind of like a very light ivory peach color. So the colors aren't very deep at all. I added a different type of green into this one, so I like the color of this. This one is jasmine scented, this one is rose scented, and then this one was the peppermint, so I made it a little bit of a deeper green. But that also does not tell you the final color that it's going to be. It will change as it dries as well. So I use this cool little bread slicer thing to measure out my slices of soap. So what I do is go on the second notch and just slice straight down. And that is 1 bar of soap. I like to cut them pretty thick. I sell my bars for usually around $5 each. So I like to make sure the customer is getting enough for their money. So now I just slide up the huge rectangle block of soap and just do the same thing again, second notch, and cut straight down. So I keep doing that until the whole block is gone. Usually it makes about 9 slices, so 9 bars of soap. And these will all just sit out here for the minimum of 4 weeks before I package them up and they're ready to go. If there's ever any like messed up soaps, or if I messed up on slicing, we usually just keep those for ourselves, for our family. Or sometimes for some reason I get like really small end pieces, so I just go ahead and use those. But I haven't bought actual soap from the store in years, ever since I learned how to make my own. And whenever I do run out, like this Christmas, I sold out of every single bar of soap. Whenever we do run out, I just support another business. I buy some goat's milk soap from somebody else. Because once you make your own homemade soaps, you don't really want to go back to the store and buy the store-bought stuff. So let me finish this up. Alright, that is all my bars that I just cut. So that made another 9 bars. So I have 9 of these, 9 of these, and I'll have another 9 of these to cut tomorrow. You usually want to give it, like I said, about 24 hours before you cut that. Well, maybe not a whole 24 hours, at least 12 hours is going to take for it to fully cool and harden. And the unmolding is super easy. You just pop this whole thing out and just peel back the silicone, or if you use the different types of molds that they sell, you can just pop them out individually. But this I'm still going to continue to keep using, so I'm not going to clean it off. And like I said, with your bowls and your spatulas and all that, if you're going to keep making soaps and you're not too worried about mixing the scents and the colors, just leave it just like that and just keep using it as is. But if you want to fully wash it, I at least recommend you run this under really hot water for a good while for all the soap to melt off, or just leave it for the next day, and that'll at least burn off or evaporate some of that fresh lye that's still in there, and just wash it the next day. So it's as simple as that. I will post the actual recipe that I use in the description as well, but it's super easy. You just need the oil, some type of milk, some type of harder fat, and then your fragrance and your color if you're going to add that into that, and the lye as well. The lye is very important. I try to use food grade lye, or I just simply Google lye for soap making and it usually pops up. I've used different brands before and they all seem to have worked perfectly fine with this recipe. So I hope this helps you out in making soaps. And you can get very creative with the soaps. I've done different colors. I've done like swirls of different colors. If you want to color it that way, you would just have to split your soap. When you're done with the Immersion Blender, before you color it and add your fragrance oils, you can split it up in different bowls. Just make sure the bowls are not the type that are going to melt on you. Split in however many colors you want is however many bowls you would want. You could even fragrance one scent and fragrance the other one and another scent and do different colors. So then when you get to the part where you're pouring it into your mold, you alternate with your colors. You could do like half and half, or just layer it and marble it. Then you could take like a skewer, swirl it around. You could do all kinds of cool things. I'm just trying to restock my Etsy shop and have some soaps for our family, so I'm just doing solid one color soaps and making it easier on myself. But I hope this helped you guys out, and if you use that recipe, remember that you can just use coconut milk and coconut oil. That is how I'm going to post it in the description. But if you want to be like me and use your own animal milk that you have from your own farm, that works as well, as long as you try to get the ingredients as close to possible as the recipe base, and as long as you don't overmix it or add too much fragrance, it should work out. It should be okay. This is my third batch in a row. Usually if this is going wrong, it has happened to me a few times, you would already start seeing it rise in the middle, and from there it just kind of explodes and spills out the sides. And again, that could be caused by different things, but so far it has worked out good. I've been very careful with the measurements, and even if you mess up just by a little bit, it turns out perfectly fine. You get this nice creamy soap, and that you know is healthy and doesn't have any chemicals that you cannot pronounce in it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it helps you make your own soaps at home. So enjoy all of your wonderful creations, and I am happy to help. See you guys in the next video.